So they're at it again. So Tulsa's Black Wall Street is being redeveloped by white companies. And this is by Renee G. So I'm not surprised, especially with what's been going on lately. And so this is really sad because Tulsa has a history. And anybody that has heard of or they read about it or maybe they know people who have experienced it know that Tulsa had a lot of wealth, a wealthy community among black people. And it was doing really well, and then there was a massacre that occurred. And that massacre left a lot of black people dead and basically displaced and homeless and having to start all over again. So a lawsuit accuses leaders of continuing to enrich themselves at the expense of the black community in Tulsa. So black entrepreneurs say that they have been reduced to renters in a historic Greenwood district, which was better known as the Black Wall Street, an area of Tulsa so prosperous it was once known as, they call it the Black Wall Street. They, as in people who are full aware of the history of that area. So over 100 years ago, African Americans owned land and they built a thriving business community in Greenwood. But in 1921, white Tulsans unleashed a wave of violence and terror on the residents and business owners in the area, callously murdering scores of black people and destroying what was viewed as a symbol of black success. And so this picture here is injured and wounded men that are being taken to a hospital by a National Guardsman after racially motivated riots and a massacre that was known as the Tulsa Race Massacre, during which the mobs of white residents attacked black residents and business owners of the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so this happened right here in the U.S. And so in more recent times, after a career in sports consulting, Guy Trope, he's 54 years of age. He returned to his own hometown with plans to open a coffee shop up in Greenwood. And he envisioned this new business as a gathering place for black business owners who would resurrect the Black Wall Street. But that didn't exactly go the way it was planned. It didn't happen. So although new businesses have sprung up around Greenwood District, they are mainly white-owned businesses. According to the Washington Post, millions of dollars in financial incentives have been spent to revitalize this area ahead of the anticipation of influx of tourists for the year centennial of the 1921 massacre. And black entrepreneurs say that they are being shut out of Greenwood's development projects and priced out of the prime retail locations. So this is a Twitter person who basically shows you how this place historically was thriving, and there were many black businesses, and so many white residents, they felt intimidated by the prosperity, growth, size of Black Wall Street. And not only was it Greenwood's Tulsa expanding in its population, but it was also expanding in its physical boundaries, which eventually collided with the boundaries of white neighborhoods. And so it was that successful. And so there was a lot of envy in that. And it was basically another way to shut out and stop the progress and advancement of black people in this country. And so white-owned firms have won the majority of the contracts and developed lucrative businesses closest to the downtown, according to the city official and business leaders. So WAPO reports that the city has only recently decided to include blacks in the venture and plan to open up more land for redevelopment, but land that is farther from the prestigious area, Greenwood Business District, or trope to trope. The city's proposal feels like a final execution of a plan set in motion a century ago when white mobs destroyed nearly $2 million in property, which today that 2 million would equate to 29 million in today's dollars. And so a lawsuit was filed by descendants, and one survivor of the Tulsa massacre accuses city, country, and business leaders of continuing to enrich themselves at the expense of black community by appropriating the massacre for tourism and turning Greenwood primarily into a white-owned commercial hub. So Trope, who is not a part of the lawsuit, found that in order to open his business or coffee shop, that is, he named the Liquid Lounge, is what he was going to call it. He had little choice but to rent in a gentrified neighborhood from landlords who don't look like us. So Trope, along with other black business owners who amid the pandemic meet up at the Liquid Lounge, are doubtful that they will benefit in any significant way from Greenland's redevelopment. And so that's pretty much what's going on. And so that's not uncommon for what's been going on. It seems like everywhere is being gentrified. It's like another fancy way of pricing out people, uh, displacing people, and basically pushing people who either they can't afford it or they missed the opportunity to put their foot out there into those type of ventures, or they've been pushed out some kind of way. They basically are resegregating places all over again, but they're using money to do it. And it's a thing where it's not only your race, it's money that they're using to price you out with, but race is primarily the target. And then they use the money as a tool or a weapon against those who they figure don't have means or access resources to stay in those areas. And so they're at ridiculous costs, or you're reduced to a renter. And that's pretty much what has happened with the housing market as well. I believe a lot of people who used to be homeowners are now reduced to renters because of what's going on. And now it's even with that, um, you're looking at people being reduced to renters that are rent burdened because you're in areas where it was primarily African American, and even in the areas that you would think would be like the cheaper areas to live, they're raising rents in those areas, or either and they're charging ridiculous rent for places that you wouldn't normally charge, or they used to not be that high of rent. But for some reason, these new companies come in and then they want to charge a lot more for things that don't even make sense. And they really haven't revamped anything that much. It's like they'll, slap a little bit of paint on there, and they maybe change up a few fixtures, and they pass it off as something new and revamped, and it's basically just another way to try to price you out, or raise rents in areas of people who really are just like working families and they don't make a whole lot because the jobs don't pay that much. So it's the same deal. It's like everywhere, I don't know of any city that hasn't faced these issues. But what's so sad is the thing with this is that these are historical places, and it feels as though they're trying to erase the culture as well. So when they try to call themselves redeveloping something, they're changing it so that you don't even know what actually happened there. It's like you're erasing history, basically. And they're trying to act as though whatever happened never actually happened. And so I feel like that's just a cop out. It's an easy way to avoid telling the history behind who was there, what happened. You know, it's like it's okay to tell the history the way some people want it to be told, like the Western history, to make it look as though, you know, that none of these tragedies had ever happened. But when you really start looking at the real true history of what has happened, it's not it's not lovely, it's not simple, it's not plain, it's not happy. It tells you of all the tragedies that unfortunately people had to suffer to go through. And it's supposed to be not only teaching, but it's supposed to teach people to not make the same bad choices and mistakes that they made in the past, and how it has, you know, created problems for us now till this day. But what happens is they want to erase it and act like it never happened, as if that's going to make things better, and it doesn't. And as you see, people never forget. No matter how you try to erase things, it's, people are never going to forget. And their kids and their kids' kids, they're never going to forget, because that's part of their culture, part of their heritage, to know who they are as people. And so if you try to erase those things, what does that say about who you are? To try to erase someone else's culture and erase what accomplishments they made and make it look like they never had any accomplishments, when there were plenty of accomplishments, plenty of good things that could have been, but someone comes along and destroys that. And so telling that history is painful. But it is the history, it's part of U.S. history, and that was never really told in the history books like it should have. Because if it was, you wouldn't have people scratching their head and people to this day wondering, I didn't even know that actually happened. There are older people that never knew that happened, because it was never put in the books, or it was never taught, or it was never told, and now they're trying to erase it completely. And so I just wanted to put this out here, because this is not the only place that's been gentrified. Los Angeles, New York, parts of New York, most of New York. I've heard Atlanta, they're trying to do things out there. Um, just, it seems like everywhere, Chicago, and you know, there were already places that you couldn't even live. So everybody's pushed together. And what do you do when you push everybody together? Everybody doesn't come from the same places. They don't have the same beliefs. They don't, you know, they, just because they look or appear to seem like they look like one another doesn't mean they have the same thought process. So it creates problems even with that. And then when you try to price people out of neighborhoods, you make it inaccessible for people who, you know, may be good people, and their families, and they're working people. They may not make a whole lot of money, but they are good people. And so that tells you what times that we are living in. And I don't think it's going to get any better, except I feel like what they're trying to do is they're making all these little projects, these buildings, where they're units for low income. But that's just like a fancy way of making projects. That's what it looks like to me. And, you know, they say they tear down projects or they change them, but they're making fancier ones, is what they're doing. And they're saying you have to have a certain income limit to be able to qualify to move into those places. And some of those places, you almost can't make anything. You have to live like really close to or way below the poverty level. Because there's some places that I had a friend, she was trying to get into this one place, and you know, you gotta allow people to at least make money so that they can buy clothes and they can, put gas in their car and pay their car note. This place had like a requirement that she had to make, I think, less, like 38,000 a year. That is like way below, extremely below the poverty level. She told them that she made, like, I think she worked 2 jobs or something. Do you know they would not accept her in that apartment? She makes close to low, but not close enough. She was not poor enough to get in there. Put it that way. So that's a bad thing too, because some of those places they want you to not even make any money. And like, what incentive is to give people that to have them stuck in a rut, So it's like you want people to want to be able to do better and encourage them, not discourage them and make them feel like, oh, you make too much money, you're not poor enough. So I don't know if you get me on that one. Anybody, if you understand where I'm coming from. There are some of these, like in LA, they have all these like apartment buildings, and I believe they say some of them are low income, or they have like a cap where you can't make that much money to live in there. If you want to move in those places, you gotta be making really, really, really low, or almost, really struggling. And that's unfair, I feel like, because it's like encouraging people to not do anything. Um, so I don't know if they worked out all that, but anyway, having said this, I'm gonna let this go. But it seems like things are getting bad before they get better. I just saw an article. This is unrelated to this one. Um, every now and then when I do these videos, I would always stick to just the article, but because there's this pandemic, I've been, kind of veering off and going into some of the things that are happening with what I've been experiencing here in South LA. And so maybe there's some things that are unrelated to the article, but sort of kind of tell you what's going on. So I don't know anybody lives out here or wherever they live, what they're experiencing. But the crime and the violence has gone up here in South LA. There's been like 59 shootings, and it is so dangerous now. It was already dangerous, but it's even, the pandemic has actually driven the crime rate up. And it did go down at one while, but now because of the pandemic, I've seen people where they've been so desperate they've gone into the store, they fill their basket up, and they just throw it all in the car, and they take off and leave. Um, there's been some really bad things that have happened. You'll see people fighting, arguing, bickering over any little thing because everybody's so stressed out because of this pandemic. There's a lot of places. There's Sizzlers, when you drive past them, they're boarded up and closed, like for good. You can't go in there. They had outdoor dining. They stopped all of that. It's closed. Um, there are places that, I guess because the landlords are upset because of the moratorium, they become aggressive with tenants. They'll harass the tenants. Um, that has been going on, like, raising rents and sneaking late fees in there. If one person's not paying their rent, they'll sneak late fees and they want you to pay somebody else's rent. Crazy stuff. And so, even I've had to look at 211, where you have to go to legal, talk to legal lawyers that'll help you in the event that you have experiences with your landlord, that are negative, or other tenants as well. There's some tenants that are now becoming squatters, where they refuse to pay anything because of what's going on. Some of it is anger, and some of it is just they don't have the money. They were already like living really bad, close to nothing. So this makes it worse. It escalates everything, makes it worse. And then there's also you'll have like right now we're supposed to be on this lockdown thing with Gavin Newsom, but they're supposed to be distributing vaccines, but I still haven't seen any vaccines for like South LA. Just for I think people who are in the health field, and anybody else I haven't really seen it. It's moving slow. And from what I was looking at, they were saying that by March, the variant, the virus that's a lot stronger than the original one that was supposed to be contagious, this one is supposed to be more contagious, and I think it's supposed to be dominant by March of this year because they've just confirmed that it's here in Los Angeles, and so it's already spreading. Um, and you'll see some. I've noticed they also said that the homeless people are starting to get really sick. A lot of them, you'll see a lot of people. They're not wearing masks. They're on the street, and I see a lot of ambulances picking up homeless people. And I think a lot of them are now starting to succumb to this virus because at first people were using that as an excuse to not wear a mask. How come the homeless people aren't dropping it? It's because maybe it hasn't hit them yet. Maybe they haven't gotten enough of whatever it is to feel the full impact of the illness. And so I believe now what I've noticed I'm not seeing as many. I do see tents and I do see homeless people, but I haven't seen as many. And I think a lot of these people who weren't in the hospital before are now in the hospital. They're sick or they're dying. And also, what was I gonna say? This right here, this gentrification, I don't know how it's gonna work out because with this pandemic, in the downtown area, I know a lot of people left. So I was looking San Francisco, a lot of people left. They just left. They packed up and so some people have chosen to go back to the like some suburban areas or areas they figure where it's not as extremely populated like the city and all these places that they try to regentrify. So this regentrification may end up not really going as planned completely in every area, I would say, because of the pandemic has a lot to do with it. Because some people are choosing not to be in areas where they feel are like highly populated. There have been a lot of shooting, like random shootings, like just people shooting guns, you know. Like right now I can hear some shooting. So, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if just people just decide they want to just do it. Um, just to do it, they're out there carrying on. Um, so yeah, so this is not something that I'm thinking is gonna be at first. I wouldn't be surprised if some other area tries to do something like this. I feel like it's war too, like it's a racial war to try to erase history of what has happened. Ever since that incident happened in Washington with the Capitol building, I feel like things are more intense, and with the pandemic, it just brings even more tension with all of these issues like this. But anyway, having said that, I'm gonna let this video go. What do you think about this? Is really sad because this is a historical place. Going back to this article, and I don't think this should happen at all, but I'm not surprised at all. Having said that, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.